I think my face, I really cared about other people and their opinion of me. Hi, I'm Sonia. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In some of the previous videos, we actually covered the topic of fantasy self through different lenses. We talked about ways and reasons you should declutter this idea of fantasy self and fantasy self. But today we're taking a completely different approach, and that is embodying fantasy self, or as the title says it, 5 signs that you're ready to embody fantasy self. Now, just a quick dive into this idea of fantasy self. And like I said, if you really want to understand the whole concept, struggles I had with the concept, go watch other video as well. But today, real quickly, or at least I did, along the way, I gathered this concept of being the best version of myself, being this fantasy self, or having this fantasy self as the epitome of becoming. And it's always positioned sometime in future, and it's very vague because you don't even know who this person is. And I have decided to kind of lose this whole idea of keeping fantasy self in future. And it is also very connected to the whole concept of self-help, because that concept also put upon us a very vague goal, which is to always be the best version of yourself, or striving to be that version. It's not always attainable, and because now I'm over 40, I finally gave up so many things that didn't serve my life, and I'm very proud. I don't think I was able to do that before in my life, but I finally am, and I'm very proud that this change has happened in my life. And these signs that we are ready to ditch fantasy self are kind of connected to that as well. And but yeah, in very simple words, fantasy self is this idea of who we should be, instead of accepting who we actually are and doing our best to improve ourselves, but not by trying to become this fantasy concept, but a reality-based concept, meaning playing around with what we have, playing with our actual talents, with our looks, and achieving, well, best possible versions of everything that was given to us, our attributes, basically. So it's kind of, like keeping it, but not keeping it for real. So it's a bit complex and complicated, but it doesn't have to be. And the idea of embodying fantasy self just means that you actually understand why you want it to be this fantasy self and what the qualities of fantasy self actually are. Okay, so the number 1 sign is that you're done performing. I think my face, I really cared about other people and their opinion of me. I still do care about other people, I just don't care what they think of me. And I don't care what they think of me in a sense that I do not make myself smaller because of fear of hurting someone else's feelings, especially about feelings they have about themselves. And I also no longer base my decisions basically on how other people think I should behave or look or what I should do. It took me, this is my story, it took me 40 years to ditch this fear of, basically it's fear of abandonment. And this whole idea of fantasy self is correlating or dancing between our needs as human beings and our fears as human beings. Basic human needs, basic human fears. Basic human needs to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be chosen. Basic human fears, fear of abandonment, fear of, I don't know, death, I guess, which is result of being abandoned in most of cases. So we build this fantasy selves in our minds that is always seen, always heard, never abandoned. And this fantasy self is so unattainable, like you can never become that person, no matter what you do, how you live, etc. Or you put your life on pause until you become the fantasy version of yourself. So what happens in the meantime is you perform yourself. You're not being yourself. You're not living life as yourself. You are living this really weird performance where everything that you say, do, think, wear, write is kind of based on, is this going to fulfill my need of being seen and chosen? And also, is this going to, mitigate the risk of being abandoned? And obviously, it's so detrimental for our well-being, etc. So it's like, I would say, and this is me going way too far, I think it's necessary for our mental health to stop performing. And for many of us, it feels so unachievable. Like, will that ever happen? I don't know how to be me. I don't know how to ditch the mask. I don't know how not to perform. For me, it happened when I turned my 40th, when I celebrated my 40th birthday. And I think I live that now, and I feel like somebody lifted the weights off. And that, funny enough, was the moment where I started noticing elements of my own fantasy self in my everyday life, which is really weird. And I switched performance with embodying habits of my fantasy self. And I'm going to use like stupid examples because I believe in them the most. And if you ever watched any of my other videos, I always use the simplest possible examples. My fantasy self, for example, is of certain physique. She looks real good, but more importantly, she feels real good. She feels strong. She feels confident. So it takes a while to kind of fake it till you make it, but without actually faking it. You have to really embrace these feelings and habits and actually do the thing and feel the feeling. But the moment you actually stop wasting your energy on this performance, you're left with A, a lot of time, and B, a lot of energy to actually do 5 push-ups today. And I know it sounds funny, but really it's true. You're doing mental push-ups all day long, so your body has no strength to do the actual 5 push-ups, sit-ups, whatever is, at the end of the day or early in the morning, or you don't have mental capacity to tell yourself, okay, now you're going to do the thing that you know will bring you closer to fantasy self. But the moment and I'm going to tell you that you can fake this, I am done with performing, even before you're ready, because that's exactly what I did. And it takes a lot of courage because you don't actually feel ready and you never will. That's very important to understand. But life, at least in my case, and I'm very grateful for that, has put me in certain situations in recent years where I had no other choice than to actually say what I mean. And when you do that for the first time, you kind of become shocked that it's not as scary as your mind fantasized it would be. It's just you said the thing, maybe it hurt someone's feelings, you wake up next morning and carry on, basically. So this being done with performing starts with a decision. That's your first step. And that's the most important step. You need to decide that you are really, really, really done with this aspect. I'm going to say aspect of yourself. You're done with it. It's part of your character even. You know, me being very bold here, but I think it is. It's part of our characters because it became so habitual for us to perform that we forgot who we actually are. So we think that's who we are. So we base our character on that. But you decide, you make a decision. I am done with performing. I will no longer perform. I will be and I will speak my truth. For example, and I'm not saying to go out there and be, like very rude to people. That's not at all what I'm advocating here for. I'm just saying to say the thing that you think and to do the thing that you believe is right for you, if it's ethically, within boundaries of other people. And to just make a decision that from now on, from right now, this is who I am and this is how I behave. And something happens in our brain the moment we make that decision. Tomorrow we wake up, and it's not like tomorrow we wake up as a completely new human being, and this is completely normal part of my life. Not at all. You wake up and you do the thing the way you always do it. You don't say what you think. You perform yourself, but you perform it consciously. And you recognize, oh, I did the old thing. I did not do the new thing. And that creates some form of detachment between you and the way you actually do things normally. Next time, when you are in the similar situation, you will again most likely approach it like you always approach it. You will smile instead of saying, hey, you really hurt me, because you don't want to hurt the feelings of the other person more than they hurt yours. So I can, I will survive. But not only that you will recognize that you did not act in alignment with your newly based decision, you will recognize how exactly that makes you feel. And that kind of unlocks a completely new layer of consciousness. And for a while, you will be some sort of observer in your own life. But as you are observing, it's a really weird, like I'm speaking here from fully my own experience. It's like I'm living in the moment, doing the thing the way I always do it, completely unconscious. Then something happens and I start observing instead of unconsciously doing things the way I've always done it. That creates detachment between you and this habit or habitual way of doing things. Once you're detached, you have much more control of how you do things. A month will pass by, 2 weeks will pass by, 2 days in some cases will pass by, and you will make a conscious decision. You will make a pause. You will be put in a similar situation, and you will make a pause and you will say to yourself, I will try to act and speak differently. And you will try. The first time it's going to be very clumsy, but you will actually say what you think. And when you do that for the first time, the neurons in your mind will completely detach from the old habit. A new habit will start forming, and before you know it, you will act, behave, speak as this fantasy version. Like you always wanted to, but you just couldn't because that's not who you really are. You will embody the fantasy version of yourself in this particular case of stopping the performance and actually being done with it. And a bonus tip here is there is like a tipping point. You will feel it like you will feel it inside of you, and it's gonna be like this. I am either gonna start behaving like this new person I want to become, or I will stop fantasizing about it. And that might be the most important step here. The second sign you're ready to embody fantasy self is that your old life kind of feels too tight. Like, if you fantasized about some improvement in your life long enough, and this is proven by quantum physics, and very well known in the Vision Board Manifestation Society, your old life will start to crumble down, and it's extremely unpleasant, I can tell you that. And I'm going to use example of our car, that at the moment of us getting the car, that was the best car we ever had. Years passed by, we're ready for the new car. Emotionally, we're not ready financially. But this old car, because we're really ready emotionally and we figure out, okay, that's it, we want a new car, we're ready for a new car. Rapidly, the old car started breaking down, like plastic in it is torn out faster in the last couple of months than it has been in previous years. And now that old car is really pain in the ass. Like, it's really like annoying. So that is resulting in us doing our best to find ways to be financially ready for a new car. But I'm not here to talk about manifestation at all. I just want to explain to you the mechanism, or in this particular video, signs that you are ready to embody fantasy self, and the mechanism of things that are part of your life and how they change. It's like that story when you ask God for patience, he doesn't give you slow life in sense of like you being this very calm, very patient person. On the contrary, you're put in situations that challenge your patience. That's how you learn to be more patient in life. So in this particular case, you feel like your life no longer fits you. You feel like you've outgrown your old life. And sometimes we keep ourselves satisfied. Our needs are satisfied in the fantasy world, but not in reality. But because we have our needs met in fantasy world, we do not do anything to change our reality. So we live in this disparity between what we live on day-to-day basis and the fantasy we have built in our minds. But when you're really ready to actually start living the fantasy in real life, what you are living in day-to-day becomes not enough, too tight, annoying, starts breaking down. The third sign that you're ready to embody fantasy self is that you became ready to lose something. In a sense that you understand that you have to give something to get something, but more importantly that you understand that it actually requires actual work, actual effort, actual presence to become better than you are. It's not enough to affirm that you're better. It's important to, like change your beliefs and work with mind as well, and with heart and with body, etc. But it's not like you really think better and you become better, although it 100% is, but it's not enough. You think better, therefore you start doing things better, you start treating other people better, and in essence, that's how your life becomes better. So by acknowledging, understanding, and being willing to give up something, fantasy self becomes attainable goal. The fourth one, very important. You no longer desire things because you want to escape your life. You start desiring things because you want to live your life. It's a really big, and if you are fantasy prone like I certainly am, it's my favorite coping mechanism. So this is how my mind used to operate. The moment something bad would happen in my life, I would run away into fantasy world, imagining an escape to a better life, or imagining a better life for the sake of having my needs met. And I do not daydream anymore. It's just that desires become more grounded and more reality-based and more aligned with your actual life today. It's not like the whole scenery had to change. I mean, that's how it used to function for me. I would have to change the whole thing to have my life be better 2%. Now I make sure that my life is better every day 0.2%, but my real life now. And I am closer to fantasy self than I ever was, especially compared to times when I would dwell in fantasy world for days and even months. And the fifth, the most important one, is that it becomes more important to you to be aligned than to be validated. And for us who would base our own worth on external validation, this is an extremely hard concept to grasp. And I have to admit that I had to live through it first, and then I was able to understand it. I was not ever able to understand what do people mean when they say your worth is based on your, it's like an intrinsical value, like you're worthy by default. I was like, what do you mean you're worthy by default? No, you're worthy if A, B, and C happens. And I just couldn't understand. And then like I lived through certain experiences where I had no other choice but to find source of worthiness within myself. And I was like, oh, this is what people mean when they say you are worthy just because you are. It was a really weird concept for me to understand. But to go back to fantasy self, the key reason why fantasy self, the version of yourself that is fantasy self, feels so good to you is because that version of yourself is 100% validated. When you daydream about the best version of yourself, you daydream about yourself being, first of all, fully met on a needs level, but also fully validated. And it really takes some of us years, in my case even decades, to understand that if I constantly base my self-worthiness on validation of others, then I'm fully dependable on them and what they think of me and how they feel about me. But if I validate myself, and the way you validate yourself is by aligning your thoughts and the way you do things with your value system, then you're fully validated in that sense. If you think and do things as you think you should do things, i.e. being aligned with values, you are validated by default. And because you're validated by default, then you're worthy. And if you're worthy, if you believe that you're worthy, and if you feel validated, it becomes so much more easier to do the good thing for yourself in this life, to do the healthy thing, to choose better habits, to think better thoughts, because your core is healthier, basically. So these were 5 signs that you're ready to embody fantasy self. And I know I did a lot of mental gymnastics in this particular video, but let me know, first of all, let me know if it made sense at all. And if it did, which of the 5 reasons triggered you the most, because I'm sure it has. And just to make the record straight here, I'm doing much better on these 5 things than I used to do before, but there are so many things that trigger me as well and trigger me strongly still. So in some of other videos I will talk about those things. I will share my triggers as well. One more thing. If you came this far to this video, please make sure that you're subscribed. I was looking at the analytics the other day and I realized that 80% of people who watch my videos actually aren't subscribed. So if you came thus far into this video, please make sure that you are subscribed, and you can always unsubscribe at any point. So thank you, and yeah, that's it. See you in the next one. Bye.